How will the damage from this year's cold compare to last year's freeze damage?
There's a big difference between the freeze events we had in 2015 versus 2014. The polar vortex damage occurred when our vines had not attained their ultimate low hardiness, winter hardiness. And when we experienced the cold temperatures on January 6th and 7th, a significant amount of damage occurred to the buds and the canes and the arms of the vines as well as the trunks. And that was very significant, and the response by growers was to actually remove some entire vineyards, or at least some vines that were damaged beyond rehabilitation. This year, on the other hand, was very different. There was a lot of cold preceding the -20 and -22 degrees Fahrenheit that we experienced twice in this last week, which did significant damage to the vines, to the buds. Fortunately, last summer, through outreach programs at Ohio State University and with commercial growers, we had a field day and some workshops to help people learn how to better protect their vines from winter damage. So we brought in a whole series of heavy tillage equipment, demoed it here at the Ashtabula Agricultural Research Station at Kingsville, as well as at some grower sites in the Geneva, Hubbersfield, Madison area. The growers really picked up on this. Making large, building large soil mounds at the base of the vine really does a lot to protect these vines from winter damage. In a way, we follow the lead that Gene Sigel set from Chalet Devanay. He uses a very large disc, and he's been doing this for years. So I think now, with the damage that we experienced with the polar vortex last year, growers adapted some of his techniques as well as some of their own to help provide, to do things in the vineyard to provide better protection for their vines. As I mentioned, last year we removed a lot of vines. At the very minimum, we cut a lot of vines down to the snow line or to the soil line because they were dead all the way to those points. We spent the summer bringing up shoots and trying to prepare for the next year to be able to get some crop next year, so we wouldn't lose 2 years of crop in a row. There are a lot of what we call sucker shoots that we trained up, that we tied up, which will eventually become trunks and arms and fruitful buds. So 2015, we had the two events that pretty much wiped out anything that was exposed, any of these buds and canes that were exposed on the tender varieties and many of the hybrids. All the work we did bringing them up into the trellis really was for naught, because the damage will be severe. We'll be checking buds and checking canes over the next couple of weeks, but I'm not very hopeful that the tender varieties made it well enough to get a crop. But on the positive note, since last year we brought up a lot of new sucker shoots that have fruitful buds on them, we protected them with soil, and they were protected further by snowfall. Many of our vineyards have 1 to 2 feet of snow covering above the soil mounds that we use to protect the vines. And because of this, we have anywhere from 12 to 30 fruitful buds protected by this insulating blanket of soil and snow. So I believe that this year is better than last year, although we hate to have 2 bad years in a row. I believe we can, our growers, as well as here at the Ashtabula station, can uncover, wait for the snow to melt, pull the soil away,
and take those buds that were protected over the winter by the snow and soil, bring them up and get at least a moderate crop of fruit from these vines.
But we'll be busy also replanting the vines that we lost during the polar vortex. Many growers have to replant hundreds of vines per acre because of the damage.
This is from last year or this year?
That's from last year. So last year, many vines were outright killed. A couple of our vineyards, a couple of our wineries had to remove entire vineyards because the damage was so severe that it just killed the vines. The vines we thought weren't quite dead, they started sending up sprouts through the summer, only to find out that they were damaged and affected by a disease called grapevine crown gall, which is a bacterial disease that tends to show up when you have damaged trunks and arms and canes. So all the sprouts that came out of these crown gall masses of tissue, many of them are unusable. So the only good shoots are the ones that sprouted from below these affected areas of crown gall. It's safe to say we can assess the damage now because many of the varieties that we grow are simply not hardy to minus 20 degrees, minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The hardy American varieties tend to be hardy to minus 25 or minus 30. Concords, Catawbas, Niagaras are the hardiest of the grapes we grow in Northeast Ohio. Some of these are made into juices and jellies, and some are made into wine. Intermediate in hardiness, we have a whole series of hybrid grapes. I'm sure you've heard of Vidal. That's the grape that's famous for making ice wine in the region. Award-winning ice wine, I might add. They're hardier than the European grapes. European grapes would be Riesling, Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, grapes like that, varieties such as those. Those are very tender. We start seeing significant damage at around minus 10 with those varieties. So you can imagine if you get minus 20, it really puts the hurt on those varieties. Even this year with minus 20, that's even enough to hurt the hybrid grapes that are normally considered bulletproof around here. Let's talk about the European grapes, the vinifera grapes. We have the white varieties, Chardonnay, Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc. We have the red varieties, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon. Each has its own hardiness, and that hardiness changes through the winter. At one point in the winter, Cabernet Franc appears to be one of the hardiest red wine varieties we grow here in that vinifera category, but it comes out of hardiness a little bit earlier than, let's say, Cabernet Sauvignon. Of the white vinifera type grapes, which all tend to be, all vinifera grapes tend to be a little bit tender, more tender than the hybrids or the American grapes. They also have different levels of hardiness. Riesling being one of the most hardy white varieties we grow here in that category. And then lesser hardy varieties would be Chardonnay, Gewürztraminer, Sauvignon Blanc. None of these varieties can handle minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit very well. So in all these grapes, we will be counting on buds that were protected by soil and snow to get a crop this year. But normally, if we have a minus 10 or minus 12, we'll see some damage in the tender varieties, such as Sauvignon Blanc, where Riesling tends to handle that just fine, until we get to about minus 15.
My name is Tony Kosicek, the owner of Kosicek Vineyards. We actually opened the winery a year ago November. I've had a great first year. We are located in Harpersfield, my grandparents' family farm. My grandparents moved here to this location in the early 1920s. Grew grapes, grew crops, cows, pigs. Actually took most all of that plus the wine they made and took it to Cleveland, sold it to Cleveland, and that's how they made their living. My grandparents lived here. My parents farmed the property. After my parents passed away, we were farming the property. We came about wanting to do a winery by some folks came through and offered us a good price for the farm. It was all great until we found out the government was going to keep a third of it for estate taxes, capital gains taxes, income taxes. So we decided to do this project on our own. We've been at this project about 5 years to get to the point of being open. We actually made 1 year's vintage before we opened so we could open with our own wine. Our idea of a winery was to be in the vineyard setting, on the farm, grow your own grapes and make your own wine. So that's the plan that we currently operate under. And the winters have really made it tough as far as us to sustain that level of operation. So not only do we grow grapes, but we also purchase grapes to make our own wine too. Last year was a very tough year for us winter-wise. We had a total of about 50 gallons of estate juice from our vinifers and hybrids, which doesn't go very far. We had plenty of Concords, which we use very little of, but we were lucky enough that the majority of our vines survived, although we did not have very much estate juice to work with.
What precautions did you take between last season and this season?
We pretty much took the same precautions we did the year before, which actually helped as far as our vine survival. We mound up very well in the fall. We actually use the Braun grape hoe, and we make 3 passes to mound up. So we pretty much have as much dirt up on the vines as what we can get. Last year was a little different than this year as far as weather-wise. We had more ups and downs as far as temperature fluctuations, which caused vines to think they were not dormant, which actually injured the vines more when we had the cold weather, and we had no snow on the ground. This year, colder temperatures overall than what we had last year, but again, we were mounded up very well, but we had the luxury of having probably 2 feet of snow cover too, which is a big plus. That 2 feet of snow cover probably saved some vines that would not have survived without snow, and it also probably saved some buds that may give us a little bit of fruit this year. You know, time will tell as far as damage in the spring, to what extent we do. Odds are, as far as bud kill, we're probably at 90% bud kill from above the snow line. Below the snow line, I think we probably have 100% survival of everything, being that everyone mounded up very well this year and the luxury of 2 feet of snow. Those buds down there that are below the snow line, they're probably going to produce a little bit of fruit for us this year. Will it be a full crop? By no means we'll have a full crop, but I think we will have some fruit that we'll be able to make estate wines again. Last year, as far as purchasing wise, we probably purchased enough grapes to make 5,000 gallons. This year, hopefully that we'll be able to find grapes to be able to produce another 5,000 gallons, which is at this point our annual production. Next year we'll probably have to ramp up a little bit from there. So it's an added cost to all of us as wineries in the Grand River Valley. There's guys that produce 120 or 150 acres of wine grapes that realistically had nothing. We have 5 acres of wine grapes and had nothing, and I know the financial hurt that it put on us at that point. We have 5 acres of vinifera. We have 15 acres of Concord. We'll be planting another 3 acres of Cabernet Sauvignon here in the spring. Our goal is to each year plant 2 or 3 acres more. We would love to be an estate vineyard. There are a few estate wineries here in the area. It's a very tough job. Being able to grow all of your grapes, make all of your wine, in my mind, it's very unsustainable at this time with the last 2 winters we've had.
Is this weather unusual for you to have to deal with?
Yes, just the cold and day after day of cold, and the extreme cold. You know, most of these vines can handle 0 to 5 below. Once you start getting at 20, 25 below, there's not a whole lot that's going to survive that as far as in the wine grape industry. There are different types of grapes that they're coming out with that will be able to withstand that. The wines that come from those grapes maybe aren't proven to what people like. People like Chardonnay, people like Riesling, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot. We try to grow those here in this area. We can do a very good job of it if Mother Nature cooperates. We actually had our first crop from our vinifera grapes, which will be 3 years ago. Made some very nice wine from it. Then had the polar vortex, no crop. This year, you can, I guess, call it the polar vortex again, and we're not looking to have very many grapes again. So yes, very tough on us when we don't have a lot of inventory built. Here we've done very well with a Cabernet Franc that we named Urban because we actually source the fruit from Ohio State Research Center here in Kingsville, Ohio. We've done very well with our estate Chardonnay, with our Riesling. So we have quite a few that we actually do real well with here that are actually grown here on our farm. If anybody wants to stop out and see us, stop out and see us. If we're not overly busy at the time, ask whoever's behind the wine bar to bring you down, take you on a tour. We'd love to show you what we do here. Again, our idea of being a winery in the Grand River Valley of Ohio is to be on the farm, grow your own grapes, and make your own wine.
Well, we lost all the grapes in 2014 because, well, we had no snow and really cold weather. Everybody knew about the cold weather. And so most of the buds died, and we had to bring the vines back up from the ground. And that's, you know, the 1 year is expected, I guess, sometimes.
Ohio wine producers probably gotten used to kind of mild winters there for a while, hadn't they?
That's right. Yeah, I started getting lazy, didn't put up enough dirt around the vines to protect them. And so, yeah, they got hurt. And yeah, the thing is, we got hurt again this year.
Did you help limit the damage this year by doing better mounding and other things?
We did more mounding, better mounding, got new equipment to do that. But then we have all this snow. So
how's the snow help you?
Well, underneath the snow, everything's alive. It doesn't get cold enough underneath the snow. Greg Johns up at the research station said there's a 40-degree difference between below zero temperatures above the snow and 24 degrees. It didn't get colder than 24 below the snow. So that's where the vines are still alive.
Now, did you have to replant?
We haven't replanted anything yet. We're going to make our own grafts. We're going to take vines that grow here and survive the winter and propagate those, make those into new vines and plant them.
That should make them more durable for this kind of weather?
Maybe they've been selected. If they survive the winter, then maybe they're tougher.
So how much did you lose as far as production-wise?
We lost everything last year. And so this year we'll have grapes, but they'll from below the snow. The wine we would pick last year, we would sell that as the grapes we would pick last year would be sold as wine in 2016 or 2017. And so what if we lose something this year, it's grapes we would be selling in 2017 and 2018. And they would be selling it as wine. It takes at least 2 years here in the cellar to have the wine finish, mature, you know, settle down, get clear, and get some flavor, because young grapes, young wines they're always, you know, exciting. They're like young kids, they're teenagers. They got a lot of energy. And so when they get older and they smooth out and get more mature, and then they behave like adults. 2 years of production, we usually produce 3,000 gallons a year of wine, and that's 15,000 bottles. So we'll be out at least 15,000 bottles out of the 14 vintage, and we'll be out 10,000 on the 2015 crop, which will you know, bottle in 2017.
When do you see yourself doing some replanting?
We'll be replanting next year. We're gonna bring the vineyard back, as many vines as come back. And we sent wood to be grafted, so we have to make babies, and the babies have to spend a year in the nursery, and then they come back and we plant them. And then it takes 3 years for them to grow up and produce grapes. So we'll be 4 years away from having any new grapes producing out in the vineyard. We'll be producing from the old grapes. You know, we had 60% survival, so 6 out of 10 vines survived. So what are our best varieties? I think Chardonnay is our best variety. It's very consistent. We can make better white wines in California. Cabernet Sauvignon is done very, very well here. Riesling I like, and many people like Riesling. It's sweet, but it ripens a week later, and so we always seem to have problems with bugs, and you know, the weather turns nasty in the fall sometimes, so it's we've had more problems getting Riesling to ripen and bring it in.
So when will you be able to assess what the weather has done this year?
Oh, we'll know in May or April, late April, early May, maybe even into June, I don't know.
Coming up this year for 2015, we have a pruning workshop on March 9th. We also have a really nice winter grape school, Northeast Ohio Winter Grape School, which is the very next day, March 10th, at the Geneva Lodge. We're bringing in some world-class speakers. Dr. Tom Burr is coming from Cornell University to talk about grapevine crown gall. And we'll also have Peter Cousins, who is a grape breeder from E&J Gallo out of California. It's one of our biggest named winter grape schools I can remember in the 30 years I've been here at the research station. So we're hoping to have a really good turnout, and hopefully we'll bring some growers in from even Pennsylvania and New York, because these are world-class speakers that are worth a trip to go hear speak on their subjects.